Hey there, welcome into Sports Talk Live Buffalo Plus. I'm Jonathan Acosta, in for Sports Director John Scott today. Joined here by our Sabres analyst, Paul Hamilton. Paul, nice to have you back here in Buffalo. You were out in San Jose, California this time last week.
Yeah, I was used to going to the arena in 94 degrees for a couple of games. Then I had to go to the rink yesterday at 30 degrees. I wasn't used to that.
Which one do you prefer?
I'll take the 94.
Yeah. As we start this show, so much to obviously get to with the Sabres stretch run and everything. We'll have the Hall of Famer Vic Carucci joining us later in the show to talk Bills offseason, plus a look ahead to the NFL League meetings coming up in Phoenix. But, Paul, we're going to start, obviously, tonight with hockey. And as we talk right now, Paul, the Sabres, incredibly, tied for first place in the Eastern Conference. So take a look at the standings as they stand right now, as the NHL action is already underway for this evening. But before it got started, the Sabres starting the night tied for first place in the Eastern Conference at 96 points, tied with the Carolina Hurricanes.
And the Hurricanes do have one game in hand on Buffalo. And it seems like Tampa Bay has had 2 games in hand on Buffalo like for 5 months.
Yeah.
It's like, when are they going to play these 2 games? Are they actually going to play them? So right now, if they win both games, they will go ahead of Buffalo. So they do have their own destiny in their own hands right now. But they have to win both games, and that's, a tall order. I mean, anything could happen in them, so nothing's won yet, but they do have 2 games in hand.
The Lightning have their destiny in their hands, but so do the Sabres, because even if the Lightning were to win those 2 games, right, they would be a point ahead of Buffalo. But then that huge matchup on April 6th between the Sabres and Lightning, probably going to decide the
on Dingus Day.
Yeah.
So it should be fun. The people in Buffalo will already be lit up for Dingus Day, and then they'll be headed down to the arena for what could be a wild one.
Certainly nothing to charge that game from previous encounters that they've had in Tampa and Buffalo, right?
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, Tampa and Buffalo really haven't been a rivalry, but all of a sudden it's like here they are, and the Lightning show up. Don't show the Sabres all that much respect, and the Sabres are basically, hey, maybe you better respect us one of these days soon.
And the Sabres are on pace to break 100 points for the first time since the mid-2000s. Does this Sabres-Lightning sort of brewing rivalry maybe remind you of what you saw maybe between the Sabres and any of the teams in the Eastern Conference during those years?
Well, a long time ago it was the Maple Leafs and then the Bruins. It was like, it seemed like they were always playing the Bruins in the playoffs. The Bruins are the Canadians. Bruins are the Canadians. The old Hartford Whalers were also in that division. So was Quebec. They would play Quebec. They never once played Hartford in the playoffs. But they played a lot of Quebec, a lot of Montreal, a lot of Boston, and it just seemed like it kept going and going and going.
Hartford Whalers, one of the best logos in all of sports. But let's get to what's going on right now. The Sabres have points in 6 straight games, but they've left a point on the table in each of the past 2. The team coming off back-to-back overtime losses to the Ducks and the Bruins. And Paul, there's sort of a half glass empty, half glass full sort of way to look at this, because you can look at this and say, hey, at least they fought back to get a point in each of those games. But also, with the standard this team is set, they certainly feel like they would have wanted to get the full 2 points in at least one of these games.
And you said standard, and that's what I see. They go into the West Coast and they take 7 out of 8 points. That's fantastic, but they're upset because they felt they should have taken 8 out of 8 because they came back from being 4-2 down in Anaheim to take the lead. They've been very good at protecting 1-goal leads, and they didn't. And they wound up getting 1 point instead of 2, which made them angry. Even though they took 7 out of 8 points, even though they've gotten points in 14 out of 15 games. They get angry when they've done what they've done the past 2 games. As I said, it really hasn't hurt them. They're fine. But, both times they came into the third trailing, scored goals to take the lead, and then blew a 1-goal lead. And that really annoyed them because they take pride now in defending those 1-goal leads. Look at Vegas. That game in Vegas, Buffalo scored, I believe it was Doan, late in the first period, and they protected a 1-0 lead for over 40 minutes.
Right, and the game against the Kings, too, that game was still in the balance in the third period as well, right? And to your point, this game against the Bruins, once they were up 3-2, and I think it was under 10 minutes left, I found myself thinking, they're probably going to get this game, in the garage, right? Because that's something that they've been able to do so often this year. Yet now, that's now 2 straight games where even you feel like they have the momentum. It's just, hey, can they get it to when the other team pulls their goalie? Because I feel like that's something they've been really good at this year,
scoring empty net goals.
Empty net goals. And it feels once the other team pulls their goalie, something that was a big issue, it felt like in the previous couple years where teams scored on them 6-on-5, something that they've been able to take advantage of with the empty net this year.
Yeah, that's the problem is teams would score on them because they kept missing the empty net. This year, they're much, much better at it to put games away. That 1-0 game, Norris, I believe, got the empty netter to make it 2-0 near the end to put that game away. But after they had protected a 1-goal lead for over 40 minutes. So it's something that, they want to brush up on and get back to it because they take a lot of pride in it. Yeah, they've lost 2 games in a row, but they've picked up points in both. They have come from behind in the third period in both. They did blow a 1-goal lead in both, but I wouldn't be too concerned as of right now.
One position group that this team is still tinkering with as we look ahead to what we think is going to be the Sabres eventually being in the playoffs is with that third pair defenseman. And it's really the position group on the team that's the most unsettled right now. Lindy Ruff trying different pairings, and the team actually sent Zach Benson back to Rochester today. They're still looking for that guy to pair with Logan Stanley, and a lot of names. You have Shen in there. You have Meta, who was in there. Connor Timmins back from injured reserve. And, Michael Kesselring, the guy that they made the big trade for in the offseason. Yeah,
and Jarmo Kekalainen feels you need size on the back end, which Metsä does not have. But Metsä, in my mind, had earned the number 5 spot. Now, let me say this. I thought Connor Timmins played the best hockey that I'd seen him play as a Sabre last night. I thought he was excellent.
And that was coming off of injury.
And that's coming off 38 games of injury. And he settled down the penalty kill, which they had given up 3 goals in the last 7 opportunities. So he settled that down. But 5-on-5, I thought he was very, very good. Just as good as Metsä probably was when he played. So I think for whatever reason, Lindy Ruff did not give Zack Benson an opportunity to kill penalties. I don't know why, because I think he'd be very good at it. But he never gave him that opportunity. Timmins is an extremely good penalty killer. Very good. And that's what I felt early in the year when he played. I thought he was very, very good at the penalty kill. 5-on-5 at times wasn't his bag. But the penalty kill, he's a shot blocking machine and just did very well. But I really did like his 5-on-5. But the thing is, are you going to send down Metsä after just 1 game of seeing Timmins play? You can always bring him back, though, if
Is it
you
really
want to
just
look
to
at
get
it
him
that
playing
way.
time in Rochester so he's not sitting on the bench here in Buffalo?
A little bit, but I think they liked what they saw in Timmins, and Timmins kills penalties, and Metsä doesn't. And their penalty killing has not been as good since Timmins got hurt. They were 1 or 2 in the league before he got hurt, and then it at times got down to number 10, I think. So it hasn't been near as good. So I think that is the difference between the 2 players. And right now, they're going to go with the penalty killer.
Paul, and we're seeing Michael Kesselring on the screen right now. Obviously, that was the big acquisition this offseason. Very quickly, what do we make of his position on this roster and on the depth chart?
Well, he's not happy right now, and Lindy Ruff is glad he's not happy. Lindy Ruff does not want players happy when they're sitting out. He had told us that there's one of the injuries he's probably going to have to fight through for the rest of the year. I still think he's going to be a very, very good defenseman. He was like the top defenseman for Team USA when they won the gold medal in the World Championship. He was an excellent defenseman with Utah. Injuries, he's never gone through injuries before. This is the first time he's had to go through injuries. And not 1, but 2, but 3. And it affected his play, obviously, especially since he still has it. I would tell fans I would not worry about Michael Kesselring, even if he has to start over next training camp. I still think he's going to be a very good defenseman for the Buffalo Sabres because I've seen it before.
And Paul, very quickly, we can't end this discussion without talking about one of the bright spots for the Sabres team during this recent stretch. Zack Benson, we know how valuable he is to this team, but it's really what has been his offensive production in this recent stretch. 3 straight games with goals, and we saw in each of these past 2 games huge goals in the third period specifically for Benson. The one to take the lead in Anaheim and the one to tie the game up against the Bruins. Really, the offensive explosion that we're seeing from Benson has been a huge lift for the Sabres team.
Now, he just has to make sure he doesn't get himself killed in the process because the other teams hate him.
Yeah,
they absolutely hate him, and they will do what happened last night. They will cross-check him into the net. They'll do what McNabb did with Vegas. McNabb saw him with his head down and absolutely cleaned him coming across the middle. And teams will take any shot at him they can because he's a pest. He makes them angry, which is what he does. As he said last night, he goes, I didn't like being cross-checked into the net, but I liked the result. I'll do that every time to get a power play and get a goal out of it. But it's the offense that they're getting on the bonus, and it's coming just at the right time of the season, where, you know, in the last 6 or 7 games, he's starting to produce offensively. Not always on the Thompson line. Sometimes he's on the Carrick line. Right? So he plays on both. He played mostly on the Carrick line the last game. So, you know, he's showing some offensive ability and is coming just at the right time.
And it really feels like maybe that connection that's blossoming between Benson and Carrick could be really valuable for this team, because think back to that Kings game, the one where Benson gets popped in the offensive zone, but still is able to get that puck up to Carrick, who ends up scoring a crucial goal.
2 guys tried to put him through the glass, which left Carrick all by himself.
So Benson, certainly his development, something that's big for this Sabres team as they push ahead towards the playoffs. But coming up after the break, it's time for football and time for Bills Talk with our insider Vic Carucci. A breakdown on a trio of signings today, plus why one national writer is down on the Bills' offseason moves thus far. That's next on Sports Talk Live Buffalo Plus. Welcome back into Sports Talk Live Buffalo Plus. Vic Carucci joining me now here on the set as we get ready to talk some Bills. And Vic, just when you think it might be a slow news day in the NFL and, nothing's going on, there always seems to be a way for a little nugget of information to drop into our hands.
Yeah, and the Bills making 3 signings to 1-year deals today, getting center Lloyd Cushenberry III, who can, again, play that interior line position, giving them depth, and I see him as a depth player. Maybe he challenges and competes for a starting job, but it's depth. Trent Sherfield, a recognizable name at wide receiver, coming back for another stint with the Bills, and of course we saw him play here, 2023, 11 catches for 86 yards. Again, kind of a nondescript year, but a guy at a position where I think depth and experience helps. And then I think this interesting move that they acquired Austin Corbett, who can play guard and center. And it's interesting. Now you got a center and a guard center coming in this trio. And Corbett's interesting because Corbett probably, of the 3 of these players, has the chance to maybe get the most snaps.
That's right. I mean, 78 career starts, 11 last season with the Panthers. You mentioned his positional flexibility. Really, this offseason, outside of the moves for DJ Moore and Bradley Chubb, maybe even if you want to throw CJ Gardner-Johnson in this conversation, those are really the high-profile ones, but not a lot of sort of big splashes from Brandon Beane this offseason. And, he's talked at length about sort of the Bills not operating in kind of this world where they're spending money on big free agents. They're more so shopping in the bargain bin, as he likes to call it. When you pay a quarterback like Josh Allen the money that he's getting. But these depth signings are still valuable, especially a guy like Corbett, where you either look at him as a potential really valuable backup, or if he's maybe even able to compete for a starting job. Obviously, if he wins the job, the team wouldn't mind to see that either.
Generally, again, players that you will see, and again, also looking here at Lloyd Cushenberry, but generally when you see guys who can play center, they will also be able to play guard, or they've had some kind of guard exposure, and it's a necessary thing that you watch how players are deployed in practices to get some of that time, because you're always one injury away from being in there.
Now, these signings, again, probably not making a splash, also unlikely to shake up these rankings from ESPN that in a recent article seem pretty down on the Bills' offseason so far. Let's take a look at these rankings. An article this week from ESPN's Ben Solak ranking the Bills' offseason at 29th in the NFL in terms of most improved rosters, 4th worst only ahead of Green Bay, Miami, and the Chargers. Solak liking what the Steelers and 49ers and Lions have done this offseason. But, Vic, I think, again, when we talk about splash signings, it's hard to really argue against these rankings from Solak.
No, it tracks. It tracks in I think most Bills fans who have been, moaning and groaning, wanting to see more and wanting to see something splashier, would have gone for that, and would have gone for something better than seeing this team do what it's done, which is stay pretty conservative, pretty basic, and they go to 29th, which tells me this particular writer, in his opinion, but it tells me that I think if you ask Brandon Beane, he's okay with that because he is also looking at the overall structure, salary cap, and so forth, keeping things in place.
The DJ Moore signing not enough to lift this team up from the 29th position.
Even if we know, looking at this team as close as we are to this team, that it does upgrade wide receiver, does it upgrade it in a big enough way?
Yeah, and so DJ Moore, sort of the big wide receiver acquisition for this team.
Right.
And again, the Bills at 29th in terms of most improved rosters, but where they can make a splash in the draft is obviously at wide receiver and at other positions, and that would be sort of the avenue for this team to be able to make that leap up some writers' offseason rankings. And an interesting report out this week of an eye-catching name that the Bills will be hosting for a top 30 visit, and that's in Rochester native Casey Concepcion. We saw him have a big year for Texas A&M. There's a report out this week that the Bills are going to be hosting him on a top 30 visit.
Right.
And, there's been the discussion of, hey, with the acquisition of DJ Moore, are the Bills still going to be basically buyers at whether in free agency or in the draft for a wide receiver? I think this report certainly indicates that Brandon Beane is not closing that door.
A transfer from North Carolina State and one of the top receivers of the SEC, Casey Concepcion, is a fascinating guy. Now, I don't know that he's a top 10 pick, when you look at all positions, but at the receiver position, he is one of the better ones entering this draft. There's a general thought that he's a first-round talent, and perhaps if you're not calling him a top 10 in this draft, is he available in that bottom half? And, can the Bills get him either at 26 or would they have to move up maybe a small amount in the first round to get him? The move up thought to me is maybe less appealing to the Bills because you still have to give something up to get that. But let's see where it goes. But he made, he made his mark at the combine, not as much. He didn't do any running. He had an arthroscopic surgery earlier this month from a spring practice. I'm not spring practice, but from an injury that carried over. But he has a speech impediment. He stutters. And when the media saw him at the Indianapolis Combine, and then, online trollers being what they are, come after him for the stuttering. And he answered them, I thought, in a beautiful way, saying, look, I want to be a difference maker for others and maybe be an example that, you can overcome. And he's had speech lessons and so forth. So, look, this is a kid that's easy to root for. Of course, what you want to see, what Bills fans want to see and the Bills want to see, is he an upgrade talent?
Well, and the thing is not just that he plays wide receiver, but it's the type of wide receiver that he is, right? Because we haven't seen him run this offseason,
right.
But from his tape in college, he's a speedster. He was an AP All-American at the all-purpose position. So that speaks to sort of the athleticism that he would bring to that position.
That first 15-yard burst and a return guy as well.
Yeah, so obviously it's the return game. We saw what Ray Davis could do at kick return, but still the Bills, I think, when you think about where they could improve this roster, certainly a punt return, they could use a lot of juice because remember back last year, they had Khalil Shakir basically just free catching punts for a majority of that year. They weren't really getting anything out of the punt return game.
One other interesting thing, this guy's dad from Rochester played at UB, was a cornerback there. So nice little interesting local Western New York tie.
Certainly would be cool to add someone other than Joe Andreessen too, because he's been getting a lot of the Buffalo local attention. Right. So maybe you can have a buddy in that aspect as well. Now coming up in the final segment though, a look ahead to the upcoming NFL owners meetings with an interesting rule proposal in case there's a lockout, not with the players, but with the referees. That's next on Sports Talk Live, Buffalo Plus. Welcome back into Sports Talk Live, Buffalo Plus. The NFL owners meetings getting underway on Monday, and Vic, they take place in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. Doesn't that sound nice to sound?
It sounds nice for you and for John. I'm so happy you're getting in. This is the first time you're going to one, right?
Yeah, I've never been to an NFL owners meeting, so John Sky and I will be there, and we'll get a chance to sort of talk with Brandon Beane and talk with other members of the NFL media and other people around the NFL. It's a good event.
Great networking experience, especially, I mean, for you, just get in there. And, John, I know John's been before. I've been to countless ones, but I think this is excellent. I'm happy you're going.
I'm happy I'm going too. I'm I won't report back on the temperatures to
don't do
although it's too hot. Some people say it's the dry heat of the desert, but it's still pretty hot though, right? When it's over 100.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, you're getting a lot of sympathy here. But
We won't talk about that too much, but one thing we will talk about, though, is the tush push, because that's a play we're going to be seeing again in 2026. No rule proposals this year about that specific play, meaning that get prepared basically to see Jalen Hurts run it a lot with the Eagles. One thing that will be interesting to see, though, is how much the Bills employ the tush push, because we saw it a lot 2 years ago, but not as much last year.
yeah, I still think there is a mentality now. It was Sean McDermott who voiced on behalf of the organization, the team, the negative feelings about the tush push, even though the Bills were arguably or easily the second most successful team using it. But it does put the quarterback at risk. It puts linemen at risk. And I think the idea is, I mean, yes, you're doing it in critical situations, short yardage, fourth down, whatever, or third and short, and you're converting these are big moments and difference. They can be difference-making plays in games. But to make the steady diet of it is still not something we've seen league-wide. And I think for that risk factor, Rich McKay on the competition committee interestingly said, they haven't put to rest the idea that it's going to get talked about and debated in the future, but it's still in play for 2026.
And Vic, very quickly, one proposal that is on the table relates to if there's replacement refs in the NFL this year. Specifically, the rule reads for 1 year only to allow the NFL officiating department to correct clear and obvious misses by on-field officials that impact the game in the event that there is a work stoppage involving the game officials represented by the NFL Referees Association. Vic, just very quickly, how likely do you think this is something that we're going to see?
Well, are we going to see replacement refs is the question. I think this is all part of the bargaining dance.
Sort of tactics and everything.
There's tactics, let people and tap into the public a little bit, because this isn't a popular thing. And I'm sure Bills fans in particular will never, and football fans in general, will never love when judgments and determinations of key penalties and calls or non-calls or whatever are made, sometimes thousands of miles away, if not hundreds of miles away.
Although I'm sure that's something, again, especially for Bills fans, potentially a sore subject, specifically with the Brandon Cooks non-catch from this past year against Denver. But we've also seen how much of a mess it can be sometimes with the replacement refs. We think back to the Fail Mary.
Yeah, the NFL, as I said, I know there's been buzz about going back to the table. I'm sure they will.
That's it for this edition of Sports Talk Live Buffalo Plus, but we're going to be back here next Thursday at 7:30 and watch on Channel 2 Sports Talk Live Buffalo Monday at 7 p.m. For Vic Carucci, I'm Jonathan Acosta.